audience is going to be the big gas tycoons like Shell, Speedway, BP, etc. Okay. So picture this: you're driving down the highway, and suddenly you're stuck behind this huge truck, the one that has billowing smoke coming out of the exhaust pipe, one that smells like burnt gasoline, and you roll up your windows because you can feel your lungs burning from it. Then you see a gap and you quickly pass them, and then you roll down your windows and let the fresh air just envelop the car. Something needs to be done about pollution, and because it's harming the wildlife, nearby towns, and natural ecosystems. But before we delve into how we're going to change, let's look at why. So in this speech, I'm going to be addressing gas tycoons like BP, Shell, Speedway, and asking them to change their means of revenue by selling alternatives to gasoline, such as ethanol, as I will go over in my speech. So the Car and Almanac, or Transportation Almanac, a website that's devoted to making the world a more safer place from pollution, has a numerous amount of info on pollution caused by motorized vehicles. So did you know that the US uses about half of the world's gasoline? This is a huge number because, as you can see, that we're not like the biggest nation, but we are the one that's taking about half the gasoline. Also, the same website says that most of the ozone pollution is caused by motorized vehicles, which accounts for 72% of the nitrogen oxides and 52% of the reactive hydrocarbons. So these components are basically smog, so when you breathe that in, it's burning your lungs and it can be detrimental to the environment around it. Also, did you know that car pollution is actually greater than factory pollution? So when you're driving down the highway and you see this big factory with like billowing smoke coming out of the smokestacks, you're probably thinking, oh wow, that's causing a lot of pollution. But the irony is that when you're driving your car past the factory, you're actually the one causing the most pollution. Another alarming statistic from Livestrong, a website that's committed to making the world a healthier place, is that cars actually release 33 million tons of CO2 annually, which accounts for 20% of the total air pollution. So basically, there are 246 million cars in the United States, and all of that added pollution together is really causing a damage on the ozone and the atmosphere. So do you really think that much pollution won't have a cause on our environment? So now that we know how cars pollute the environment, it's time to examine the negative consequences that the exhaust releases on the environment and what they have on humans. So cars release microscopic ozone particles, and what they do is when you inhale them, it goes into your lungs, and then it basically causes a really bad sunburn, if that makes sense. So the particles go into your lungs, they bounce around on the inside, and this would cause severe damage. Also, it can cause long-term effects like cancer, strokes, heart attacks, stunted lung development in early children, and other things around the environment. So now that I have identified the problem and shown how it affects the environment and people, it's time to look for a solution. Okay, so let's start using ethanol. Ethanol, and for those who don't know what it is, it's kind of like alcohol, but it's like a derivative of it, and it's made from all biodegradable material. So the U.S. Department of Energy says that ethanol can drastically reduce pollution on the environment, and that's because it's all biodegradable and renewable. And so basically what it does is you take the byproducts, so that's like the leftovers of like animal feed, processed grain, and anything else, and you take that and you put it into ethanol. So we're not going to be producing any other sorts of grain, wood chips, cornstarch, whatever you name it, to produce this because we already have the means to do it. It can be harvested from basically any biodegradable material, and especially animal feed, like what you feed your horses or cows. They don't get the whole grain, and you can take the part that they didn't get and make it into this ethanol. Okay. However, there is a downside from using ethanol, and that's it's 30% less energy efficient than gasoline. So what this means is that when you use gasoline, your car will run 30% longer instead of if you use ethanol, it won't last as long. But it actually has more pickup than gasoline, which I thought was very interesting. It's actually cheaper than gasoline. The state government of Nebraska states that ethanol is so common that it's actually about 118 to 204. You can see the gas prices up there. And the 118 is the ethanol, and the 204 is the gasoline. And this is in Nebraska, so that's why it's cheaper. It gives your car more pickup, it's renewable. Some of the cons are that it's less fuel efficient. Engines would have to be re-engineered to take a higher level of ethanol, and this is the reason because if you put it straight into your engine right now, it would actually like wear and tear on the engine itself. So cars would have to be re-engineered, which would be kind of a hassle, but it's also doable because race cars are actually using ethanol to power their vehicles because it gives them more pickup. So that's from axleaddict.com. So basically all you Duramax lovers out there, if you put ethanol into your engine instead of diesel, it'll actually run faster. So that's an interesting fact. Okay, so my plan is that ethanol can start being incorporated into gasoline so we can run on more efficient fuel. I'm not saying we could completely replace gasoline right now because I don't think that's really possible. But if we incorporate ethanol into the gasoline, like an E40 mix kind of, it could make it run longer and more efficient, and we wouldn't be leaving as much of a carbon footprint. So some cons are that businesses would have to change their original ways, but it actually wouldn't be too drastic because we already have the byproducts from the corn and feed that we can use to make ethanol. I think this plan would be very easy to do because it would be effective. It would actually save money from oil drilling because you just literally buy leftovers, and it would be beneficial for the environment as well, and make your car run better. Okay, so now I have another scene for you to imagine. Imagine you're driving down the highway behind the same truck. Well, the difference is that you feel the fresh breeze against your face and you don't feel anything. And that's because the car is using ethanol. And it doesn't have the footprint. So, my question is, why don't we make the transition before it's too late? At some point, diesel and gasoline will run out. And we have to find a way to switch over to a more renewable fuel in order for it to last longer. So I ask again, what's stopping us? Is it because of the money? When do we realize that some things do not have a price on them, and we are killing the environment before we have time to save it? It's time to change our ways and create a future that has less pollution in it, and start selling ethanol, a more eco-friendly alternative. After all, innovation is the key to success. We have to change our ways before it's too late. And that's my speech.